When the dust settled from Alexander's first victories in Asia Minor, the world began to realize something extraordinary was happening. A young king, barely in his 20s, had crossed into Persian territory not with hesitation, but with the confidence of a man who believed destiny stood beside him. He defeated Persia's forces at Granicus, seized cities once loyal to the great king, and marched with speed and purpose across the coastline of Asia. Yet, far to the east, in the royal capital of Persia, Darius III watched with growing alarm. He was ruler of the largest empire humanity had ever seen. His banners flew across Egypt, Mesopotamia, Asia, and beyond. Armies obeyed him, and yet a single foreign commander, a young Greek, a warrior king, threatened to undo all of it. Whispers filled the palace halls. Was Alexander just a bold youth who would soon fall? Or was he something more, a storm gathering strength, a conqueror rising? Darius could not sit idle, so he commanded messengers to ride across his empire, gathering soldiers, cavalry, archers, infantry, and mercenaries from every corner of Persia's lands. He would not simply defend. Alexander knew this day would come. He had not come to raid Persian soil. He came to conquer an empire. He understood that Darius would eventually rise to meet him, and rather than fear this, he welcomed it. Every step Alexander took was guided by ambition and a burning belief that greatness awaited him. He moved across territories, liberating Greek cities from Persian rule, securing coastlines, and spreading fear among Persian satraps. He wanted Darius to come. He wanted a decisive battle, not to fight Persia's commanders, but Persia's king. So the stage was set not by accident, but by two wills colliding, one clinging to an ancient empire, the other forging a new one. Darius expected Alexander to retreat in terror once he saw Persia's full might. Instead, Alexander pressed forward. Fate soon played its quiet hand. Without knowing, both armies passed each other along narrow mountain roads near the Mediterranean. When Darius realized Alexander was behind him, he turned back and moved toward the small town of Issus. There, the battlefield compressed between mountains and sea, a narrow strip of land where Darius's massive numbers would be less effective. Alexander also learned where Darius stood. He did not hesitate. He marched north, toward Issus, toward the enemy king. The moment had arrived. The most powerful ruler in the world and the most ambitious challenger in history would face each other not through generals. Campfires flickered on the night before battle. Macedonian soldiers sharpened spears and whispered prayers to the gods. Persian warriors looked toward their king, confident in their numbers and believing Darius would crush the intruder. Alexander walked among his men, speaking to them not as a distant ruler but as a commander who fought beside them. He reminded them why they marched, for honor, for Greece, for eternal glory. He spoke of courage and destiny, and they believed him, because they had seen what he could do. Dawn broke over the mountains, lighting the valley in a cold, golden glow. Mist hung over the river that cut through the battlefield, the Pinarus. On one side stood Darius with a massive army, his royal chariot gleaming, surrounded by elite guards and Greek mercenaries hired to stop Alexander. On the other side, Alexander positioned his forces with intelligence and precision. His plan was simple in idea but brilliant in execution. Hold the left, strike with force on the right, and aim straight for the heart. Darius himself. The battle began with movement, not noise. First came archers and skirmishers, loosing volleys across the water. Then the Macedonian phalanx advanced, shields locked, spears thrust out like a living wall of blades. The riverbank was steep, muddy, and difficult. Persian infantry held strong positions, hurling javelins and meeting the first Macedonian push with fierce resistance. On the left, Parmenion, Alexander's trusted general, faced overwhelming Persian cavalry. Darius had placed enormous strength there, intending to break Alexander's lines and encircle him. The fighting was brutal. Hooves thundered, shields splintered. Macedonian riders struggled to hold their position, pushed dangerously close to the sea. Victory on that flank would collapse Alexander's army. But on the right, something different was happening. Alexander saw the Persian left was weaker than the right. He knew hesitation meant defeat, and so, as always, he led by example. Without fear, he drove forward with the companion cavalry, riding Bucephalus, his trusted stallion. His helmet plume shined like a beacon, making him unmistakable. Soldiers did not need to ask where their king was. He was at the front, charging directly into the storm. When Alexander's cavalry struck, they hit like lightning. The river exploded with water and screams. Horses collided, lances shattered, men fell. Persian noble cavalry fought fiercely, but Alexander carved a path through them. Every strike pushed the Persians backward. He was not merely winning ground. He was creating chaos. And in chaos, opportunity is born. With the Persian flank breaking, Alexander made his boldest move. He angled his attack toward the center, toward Darius himself. He saw the Persian king's royal chariot. He saw the guards around him, and he knew that one moment could end the war in a single stroke. The sight sent panic through the Persian ranks. A roar went up. Alexander was coming for Darius. The great king of Persia suddenly faced not a general, not an army, but a single man determined to carve his name into eternity. Persian bodyguards rushed to block Alexander. Swords clashed, spears splintered. Dust swirled around the chariot wheels. In that chaos, the truth became clear. If Darius stayed, he would die. The ancient rule of empires whispered its cruel warning. A king who dies on the battlefield loses more than life. He loses the empire. He pulled his horses around, turned his chariot, and fled. Persian commanders saw him leaving, and panic swept the army. Soldiers began to run. Officers tried to hold the line, but fear moves faster than commands. The battlefield turned into a flood of retreating men. Macedonian cavalry pursued, cutting down those who fled too slowly, seizing weapons, armor, standards, symbols of Persia's pride. The riverbanks that morning had been filled with determined warriors. By evening, they were filled with bodies, discarded armor, and the echoes of fear. The Persian army broke. The Macedonians held the field. Alexander had won. And not by luck, not by sheer numbers, but by strategy, courage, and leadership. He chose the terrain. He struck where the enemy was weak. He personally led the decisive charge, and when the moment of fate arrived, he drove straight toward the ruler of an empire without hesitation. What happened next revealed Alexander's character. When he entered the Persian camp, he found something unexpected. The mother, wife, and children of Darius. They expected death or humiliation, but Alexander told them they would be honored, treated as royalty. Their fear dissolved into astonishment. The conqueror was fierce in battle, but respectful in victory. This earned him not only admiration, but loyalty from many who saw him not as a barbarian invader, but as a king of power and honor. The consequences of Issus rippled across the world. Persia's illusion of invincibility shattered, cities surrendered, and Alexander's legend grew, not just as a commander, but as a king destined to rule nations. Victory at Issus meant more than capturing land. Proof that Alexander could challenge and defeat the greatest empire on earth. Proof that his march was no reckless dream. Proof that destiny stood beside him. From that moment, the Persian Empire was living on borrowed time, and Alexander, standing at the shore that night gazing toward the east, knew the future still waited for him. Egypt, Babylon, Persepolis, and lands farther than Greek imagination could stretch. He had not come this far to stop. Darius had fled once, but Alexander swore he would face him again. For the Battle of Issus was not the end. It was the turning point. The moment the world realized